Welcome to Beyond the Breakwater, where just beyond the crashing waves of fear, discomfort, and doubt lies the greatest potential for life transformation. We want to guide you into the open waters where the calculated risk you take becomes the turning point for you or your organization to thrive. So draw up your anchors and prepare for departure in this week's episode of Beyond the Breakwater. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Breakwater. I am Lyndsay, and we have again with us this week, Ed and Matt. Welcome,
Hello.
Guys.
Hey, Lyndsay.
So we are going to keep rolling with the Gen Z millennial discussion, talking intergenerational and where the church fits into that. We've kind of talked last week about the tensions that are existing with technology and online worship and what role the physical local church has to play in that, and looking at tensions of like, where's Gen Z at? Why are they not in the church? And we wrestled in that tension last week, and we kind of ended it talking about like, okay, but what do we do about it? And do we have the answer? Do we have a answer? So Ed, start steering the ship. Where are we going today?
All right. Well, I'll start steering, but I just want to start out with a really simple question, you guys. Do you think we're driving everybody crazy in these podcasts of talking about this generation?
I don't know.
Well,
I'll take a poll. Yeah. On Spotify. Let us know what you think. That whole blurb thing. You can respond.
What's Spotify? No.
Tell me more.
I thought we were doing a radio show.
I thought we were doing fax and printer. I'm a little confused about all this stuff. No, I'm just wondering, do you think we're driving people crazy? Because this is a really big topic.
Mm-hmm. I like it. I really like discussions about Gen Z and millennials in the younger future church, because I've just been in a place of like, can you give us a voice? Can we do something? Like, can you, like, where do we fit in all this? Where do we belong? So I like being able to be like a spokesperson for that as much as I can. So I'm loving it. I listen to stuff like this all day. Whether or not other people are interested in it, I don't know.
And maybe it's just how I'm wired, but the more that you guys talk, sometimes the more confusing I get. Like,
nice.
I thought I had a little bit of this figured out, and you guys are reminding me I don't have a clue about anything. So I think this is really, I think it's really good we're talking about this, and I hope people will just settle in to the conversation, because there's not necessarily answers, but we all have to navigate through this. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we're just coming to grips with this is why the church is struggling today. And it's why I think the church is getting older, and it's why younger generations are not embracing the church, because they're not getting into this and they're not trying to figure it out together. And I think it's a little hard. But I just want to throw a question out for you guys. So you've said in the past, both of you have, there's so many distractions, and technology can be a distraction. It's also an amazing tool. That's kind of that shadow side you talk about. It's a great side, and then there's a shadow side. I mean, there's great things in technology, and there's probably some really bad things on technology. Good things that are helping people in their lives, and there's some things that are really destroying people's lives. So with all these distractions and influences today, where does the church have a voice?
I think like the church can speak to, we've talked, I think, a little bit about this, but it is a voice of truth and can be a place of like meaning and purpose, and where people feel seen and heard and can navigate through things. I think like technology has kind of become something that either my generation can turn to for either one, and probably first and foremost is just entertainment. But with that, there is an avenue of like becoming numb to something, or it's a way of coping. And there are things in any given day that are like, they're just overwhelming. And it's like, yeah, we mentioned 10,000 messages a day that we're receiving, whether that is literally like another human texting us, or a message of like an email or a subscription, or like there's just, everything is like fighting for our attention. And so you go to a different platform of like, this is just too much. I can't think about any of it. And I'm just going to scroll on TikTok and be entertained. Or it's like, there's this feeling of grief that I have and I don't know what to do with it. And so I'm just going to scroll and be removed. I think that was, people express that in different ways, you know, like gaming, Netflix, like all that stuff. But scrolling is definitely one of those. But I think something that the church can do okay, so sorry, entertainment is one, or just like coping. But I think the other flip side to that is like seeking information and wanting to learn things, but they're going to TikTok for that, or to be educated in a way that is not super, like, doesn't have a ton of validity to it. But I think like we were as humans meant to experience emotions, like God had emotions. And rather than understanding how to wrestle through those and how to feel them, we choose not to. And the church can be like an invitation when you start to feel to, like, that's an invitation for connection. And so I think the church can be that, as well as a place of like to go to for wisdom and information and counsel and purpose and navigating through some of those things. I could keep going in a bunch of different rabbit trails, but I'll cut myself off there.
I feel like we could take about 4 hours just to unpack what you just said to really understand it well. So, okay, great setup. I mean, Matt, just maybe answer the same thing. I think in a world of so many influences in people's lives, how is the church different?
I think it's interesting what should be, what is. I think that there have been some pretty significant shifts and very healthy shifts in Christian culture in America over time. I think of things like one of my favorite books, and I love to take people through it because it's very transformative, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. Simply the idea of slowing down, Sabbathing, embracing time with Jesus, being a creature rather than feeling like we have to play God all the time. That contemplative spirituality where feelings of hurt and sadness and anger, those are feelings that God had, like you were saying, Lyndsay. And he gave us those feelings to us as his image bearers. Therefore, how do we navigate those things? And I think that's one of the more helpful shifts that have happened and is continuing to happen. I know that a lot of what's kind of in vogue right now, ex-evangelicals, or people who are de-churched, they've left the church, they're angry, they're sad, whatever the feeling is. But I think you could connect some of those experiences to an inability on the church's part to respond to the emotions, to the questions, to the hurt that they were feeling. And they just didn't know how to walk through that. So how does the church kind of be unique in the midst of all of these voices? I think the reality is the church has made oodles of mistakes, and I think we should always be very quick to say that. Never defend Mother Church. Other churches can be a really, really bad thing sometimes, but it can be a very beautiful thing, and I think it's what we in the Apostles' Creed, I believe in one holy Christian and apostolic church. I believe in it. I don't always see it, but I believe. And there are resources, the Scripture itself. The people of God have always messed up. They've always screwed up with how God intended them to be. So what are the resources of Scripture that point us into being the most life-giving, the most positive, the most healing community that that the world has ever known? I think that's what the church gets to offer.
So let me apply the model first, and then we're going to go back to more questions about it. So if you think about the Harbor Church, through the breakwater, beyond the breakwater, it seems like when a church is more in the harbor and maybe has come in and never left and is there, it seems like the church has lost its voice because there's not a lot of significance that's really happening out of it. And there may be good preaching, maybe not. There may be good worship, maybe not. Maybe traditional, maybe contemporary. None of that matters, but it seems like the church is losing its voice. We've experienced that. The more that you take a church outside, beyond the breakwater, it seems to have a voice that everybody's interested in. They want to hear. So what is it about the church, in the harbor and the church beyond the breakwater? It's lost its voice, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think it's lost its voice more in the harbor. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. I mean, there's this line in Hamilton, and it says, like, if you stand for nothing, what do you fall for? And I
don't know how to answer that.
What do you mean?
It's a great expression, but
Yeah, but it's like I think I could speak for a lot of young adults in saying this, because these are in a lot of the conversations that I'm having of both, like, young adults want purpose and they want something that is impactful, and they want their dollars to matter, they want their time to matter, they want to do something that is meaningful. And if you are a young adult, you're probably not starting out in a job as a CEO, and you're starting out at the bottom of the totem pole where a lot of your tasks feel like they don't matter. And so if they can't find that in their job and they cannot find that in their church, they plug into other, like, social justice arenas. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
I think on the flip side, where I'm saying this too, I can speak for a lot of young adults in this, is that there is a desire to have, like, really like abrasive truth, in a abrasive and loving.
Abrasive truth. Wow.
Yeah, where
there you
it's
go.
like they want to talk about, like, the buzzwords and things like, can you please tell me how my faith plays a role in politics? Can you show me and tell me and equip me on what it looks like to be a Christian in a secular world? Can you tell me, like, what the Bible has to say about homosexuality? And can we actually talk about it and not talk in vagueness? And that's what I mean. If you stand for nothing, what do you fall for?
Okay.
If we're just watering things down and talking very, very generally about things.
Okay, pause for a moment,
Okay.
because I think you got two really huge topics here. And I guess I'm looking at the model, because I think without the model, we don't have a podcast. I mean, this is the whole value of this. If the first thing you said, they're looking for meaning, purpose, impact, they want things to matter, they want their life to matter, that's all beyond the breakwater, right? Are you going to find any of those things really within the harbor? I mean, what's the purpose of being in a harbor for a boat? Come in, rest, refuel, get supplies, but you're not making an impact. You're resting, you're gathering, you're being in community, which is all great, but then eventually you got to go out, because that's where a lot of that impact is going to be. Then the second thing you talked about is you talked about all of the issues. Well, I think a lot of those issues are really beyond the breakwater issues. And we're talking about a lot of dying people, or dying people without Christ.
Yeah.
Or how does the Bible fit into all of these lifestyles and all these choices that people are making? And this is where the church has been silent, because the church is too busy in the harbor than to go out where people are wrestling with these issues and to try to give a voice to it. So I'm seeing how this is fitting together. So Matt, you've been kind of quiet here. Well, I know I haven't asked you any questions.
I've steamrolled them. Sorry.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Lyndsay.
So maybe I want you to just respond to this, because I think you can see both and.
I see that metaphors are always helpful, and then they break down at some point. I feel like there's a little bit of that happening in my mind here, but because if you're bringing them into the harbor, that's sort of, okay, safe haven, we're kind of healing all sorts of different things. But I think in reality, I think people experience purpose and meaning because they see other boats that represent other ideas, ideologies, faiths going out beyond the breakwater and doing things, and the church isn't moving. So I think in some sense, there is a reality that may or may not have been brought up on the podcast before, that is, there are other boats that represent different ideas and thoughts and visions for thriving, human thriving, and they're going out and they're doing something. They're grabbing people who are drowning, flailing, and they're pulling them aboard, and they're finding healing. People like the LGBT community, which has been historically very maltreated by the church. That's there, and there have been very heroic efforts by parts of the church, like the Center for Faith, Gender and Sexuality with Preston Sprinkle. That's a great organization that I think is very trying to ask questions. How do we incorporate a people, a whole community that is wrestling and in pain and hurt, and bring them into, so they have a place, kind of like what you're describing with young adults, but to a much more significant level, I feel. How do they belong? How can they be healed in this place and find meaning and purpose in the church? When so often the church's message has been like, you don't have a place, meaning, or purpose in this place. There's the door. And that's a significant issue. But that's not just the gay community by any means. We have a saying I heard that really just like took me for a trip. The Church of Jesus Christ is the only army I know of that shoots its own wounded and buries them before they die.
Wow.
I was like, whoa, that is shocking. But let's be honest too. There are people there's cancel culture in other communities that if you don't toe, I mean, in certain political circles, for instance, where people find a lot of meaning and purpose, they're doing a thing, they're going out, they're making a difference, right? And then they say something, their opinion starts to shift and change. The narrative that they've been told is not matching up with the thing that they're seeing on the ground. And they're like, I don't know, I'm asking some questions. And they're like, you can't ask questions. If you do, you have to get out. And so it's not like the church is the only, has its own devils. Every community has its own demons that they need to contend with.
So how does the church make a difference? Like what can the church do that nobody else can do?
Well, it just comes back to John 10:10. I mean, the devil comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. And I think anybody can look around the world and they say, I see there's a lot of death, destruction, and hurt. And Jesus says, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. So if that is what Jesus has come for, that's his mission, to bring the reign of heaven into the world. The king has come, so that's good news. So the church is the ambassador of that good news, and to bring that good news, an embodiment of that good news. If the reign of heaven that Jesus sought to bring to us begins through his body, the church, we need to be the best representation of that, the best possible citizens that we can be. And that's a unique role that the church plays. I think we could harp on all the things that the church does wrong, but there's so many things the church can do and does really, really well. And some will do better than others. But that's why we have the local church. Not a local church can't be everything to everybody, but I think what did Mother Teresa say? I can do some things and you can do other things, but together we can do great things. And I think that is the reality when you have the whole body of Christ working together in tandem, recognizing a collective call to be on mission and to advance the reign of heaven in this world. I think we can do great things.
Lyndsay, you mentioned quite a few times about being seen and heard. You've used that phraseology more than fax and printer. I kind of like that.
Keep bringing that in.
I still don't really know what it means, but I'm just kind of use it because
relevance.
You use it, I'm going to use it, and you're like, there he goes again, fax and printer.
I have that much influence.
That boomer.
Great.
Stop it. But seen and heard. Maybe just the way that my mind works. Okay, so when somebody comes in, they're seen and heard. Forgive me for saying this. It can feel like a participation trophy. Like, oh, we want everybody to feel good about being on the team. We just got slaughtered, but everybody participated and everybody did a good job. And I can have a little bit of that feeling for if people come into the church and everybody's seen and heard, great. Now what? I mean, or is that it? I mean, so I think I'm asking to be like, bring me along here. Because if we have a church and everybody's like, do you feel seen? Do you feel heard? Okay, good. Now let's go home. Or is there more?
Yeah, at least I don't think that it stops there at feeling seen and heard, but I think that's where it can start. I think of like when examples that I have felt like really mobilized in the church and like can start to like, okay, now like I'm in, like you recognize it, I'm here. And I don't think I'm seeing it in like a selfish way, but I don't know, I could be, but I think of like how I feel loved by Jesus and to be like fully known, like God knows everything about who I am. He knows like the ugly thoughts I have. He knows like my heart's desires, and like he still loves me in all of those things. And like that I'm not to be like excluded from his love because of like my processing thoughts or whatever. And I think of like the greatest friendships I have and how it's like you can have that trust to be like, can you help me? Like, with this thought that I'm having that I like probably wouldn't vocalize to anybody else, and like thank you for still loving me through it. I think that is the desire that anybody would have, not just young adults, when they're entering into a space and into community with one another, is like we all carry this mask in front of us to be like, okay, I'm going to let them see this and I'll start to lower it as soon as like they show me that they can still like love what's underneath this. And so I think that's what I mean from like a heart level of being like seen and known.
Kind of like a safe place where you can have those questions and ask those the hard questions, drop the mask. Like, this is what I really think about.
Right.
This is what I really struggle about. Am I still okay?
Yeah. Because even Matt and like you saying, like, as we're talking about this, there are sometimes on this podcast where I'm like, is it okay to say this thing? And then it's like you were like LGBTQ plus community and talking about like how the church has like really hurt this community. And it's like, I just like felt with like in me like this breath of like, okay, we can talk about it. And so I think that is like kind of the place that the church can have in like giving people a space to be like, okay, we don't have to have this mask on and talk about it in a way that is in like vague metaphors and like, is that really what we're talking about here? Like, I don't really know. And it's like, okay, you said what I've been feeling, and you said what I have been like experiencing out there in the Beyond the Breakwater is this like whole community of people who are so hurt, and I don't know what to do about it and how to address it. And so I think like in the coming into the church feeling seen and known, that is a layer of it. That is, I think, something that every single person like has the desire to feel. I think where it can go beyond that is now that I feel seen and known, and like I've mentioned this too, like this weird dynamic of I'm single and like nobody sees me because there's not a place for me here. And then like my friends who have been like, oh, we just got married, and you won't believe like the pastor came up to us and like this person knows my name, and so many people have been like, oh, like how are you doing? Like what's new in your life? And it's like they have felt like I've been going to this church for 5 years. And it's now that like I am married that I feel this way. So I know there are layers in that, but I think where I've seen this done really well is when you see and know a person and recognize them and love them. The step beyond that is like, can you help me figure out where like my place is in this missionally? Like I think I have these passions and skills. I'm still new to these skills. These are still being developed, but maybe you can help me step into a place where that might be like a good intersection point, whether that is a felt need in your church or if that is in a ministry outside of it. And so I think even just looking at some of the churches that I know that do that really well, I see it like flourishing with this people. I think we've talked about like the cruise ship in this model where it's like the cruise ship, it has a small team of people running the ship and making sure it's afloat, and thousands of people that are there being entertained and receiving, versus like the rescue ship church where it's like every single person on that ship has a job and a role to do. And the passengers are the ones that are lost and needing saving and healing and restoration.
Okay, so let's keep narrowing that focus just a little bit more. Because up until that last moment, it really could have been any organization or any club where we can feel seen, we can feel heard, we can feel loved, even feel God loves us. You know, that's not exclusive to the church. So a lot of what you were saying could be universally used. So let's drill down a little bit more. Now you talked about the mission. Okay, that's something that's what makes a church is the mission. So what's unique about the church that they have something to offer all generations, but especially we're talking about Gen Z, millennials. What does the church have to offer? And maybe what this is couched in, there's a little bit of an agenda on that, is because if the church really does have something to offer, then how come so few Gen Z are in the church? So if we have it, they're not coming. Or do they have it and we're not communicating it well? Or are they just looking for something completely different? And I think that's really like a huge question in my mind. So, Matt, what is it that the church has that
God.
nothing else has.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, there is meaning and purpose in the activity of the reign of God, but it's God's reign and us working through him and all the ways that the Holy Spirit comes upon us and activates us with his gifts to go out and be this temple, be the dwelling place of God on the earth. Apart from the church, there's no dwelling place of God on the earth, because that's the significance of the Holy Spirit coming on Pentecost and filling the disciples. I mean, whenever there was a flame or the glory cloud that would fill the temple, it came and filled the tabernacle in Exodus 40. It came and filled the temple after Solomon had built it, and now it comes and fills people. That's hugely significant, and that we are then therefore sent out as carriers of the presence of God into the world. That's what we have to offer. We offer the presence of God to a lost and hurting and broken world.
Okay, let me pause you there, because I think we're getting closer, and I think this is why churches are missing it. Because when you said God and you said Jesus, that's what the church is different. Well, I think there's a lot of organizations that have God, they have Jesus. So I was kind of wondering where you were going to go, because you can have a great Christian group, club, it's still not the church. But I think both of you are kind of dancing around this idea. It's when the church is missional. Because otherwise, I've got Jesus in me. I don't need the church for anything because I've got Christ in me. I'm good. Never have to go to church again. So what's different about the church? You're starting to say this like, now that we have Christ in us, now what? What is the mission that God is calling us? And this is where I think our model is all over this. I mean, this is our model. I think, and I want you both to respond to this, I think what the church is missing, which is why Gen Z is completely absent, is they've done nothing with the faith that they have. Mm-hmm. Faith without works is dead. Mm. If you have church with great faith doing nothing, it's a dead church. Is it really church? Mm-hmm. Show me your faith, and I will show you my faith by my deeds. This is what James is talking about. So I'm just wondering from a boomer, I'm wondering if the church takes to heart their mission. Mm-hmm. Thy kingdom come. Mm-hmm. What is God doing? And I want to be a part of what God is doing. Mm-hmm. And it seems like the church is the perfect place where that can be mobilized, as we would say, beyond the breakwater. Mm-hmm. And that's where those conversations are going to happen. That's where that mission's going to happen. So, Lyndsay, maybe comment on it. Like, is there anything else that comes to mind that is so missional that the church has with Christ on mission to save the world? Do you think Gen Z would want that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I spoke to like the purpose and meaning behind things that like Gen Z is having, and I think we have this restlessness to us. I mean, we even talked about like van life and like turning vans and putting mattresses in them and going around the world. And like Matt was like, "Oh, that's so dumb."
And because that's a very single person thing to think about and fantasize about. I'm thinking about our rabbit, bird, and 2 kids and making a good time in a van.
Okay, yeah, that sounds horrible. But to
That's
me,
what
I'm like,
saying.
I want van life so bad. I was like, before I took this job, I should have done the van life for like a year.
When our kids were little, we got a really big van so they couldn't touch each other. Because when we had a smaller minivan, oh my goodness, it was terrible with 4 kids. I mean, everybody was just, it was horrible. So we got this monster van, the big ones. Mm-hmm. I think now they call them creeper vans. We had one of those. But we had a creeper van because that way we could put the kids in 4 corners and they couldn't reach each other. It was perfect.
Yeah.
Put a video on. There's technology of the day.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys would have got a chuckle out of this. I took a laptop and hung it from the ceiling.
Nice.
Plugged into the cigarette lighter. And so we had my laptop hanging from the ceiling, and that's how the kids got to watch movies in this big creeper van.
Ed was doing van life back in the day before it was van life.
Contextualized to a family situation.
We're derailing.
Yep.
Let's come back. So Gen Z and missional that the church.
Yes. So I'm saying like there's this restlessness that Gen Z has to like do something. Like it's like we don't just want to go to work and do the mundane stuff every day and in and out and rinse, repeat and keep going. It's like I am just hearing this big like we want to like we want something to matter. And so I think where I'm seeing the church that could be like mobilized and where I'm seeing young adults get really excited is when the church has a ministry and they can use their gifts practically rather than like, hey, we really want to give of our time. And then they say like, okay, great. Like go stand in that corner and pass out coffee to everybody coming in the building. And they're like, really? Like, okay. But then it's like you have like I have a lot of friends in Grand Rapids who are like what is grabbing their hearts is the stuff that's like homeless ministry and like having a friend that goes and sits in the park with like those who are without a home, but they are still people and they still matter and they still, some of them like love the Lord and some of them are so lost, but they're still a person. And what is grabbing Gen Z is to be able to like go there before church and just hang out. And that is where they hang. And then it's like, okay, then we go to church. And if some of them come, great. If they don't, hey, I'll see you right after and let's have a meal together. Like it is giving them purpose. Like I've mentioned, I feel like I have an ear for listening to people and it can be used and abused, or it can be like utilized for a purpose. And so if there is a space in or outside of the church, but in a way that matters, like it's like, we just went again and just like shared a meal with people without a home. And like, that is where I feel like it is the missional piece. Like I'm not just sitting here, same rinse, lather, repeat every single day, but it's like God can use whatever he has been like, I've given you this thing, like don't just put it on a shelf, but like actually use it. And so like in the model, a boat, like I under no circumstances want to sit in a boat that is just going to sit there, probably throw up everywhere. Like I want to be in a boat that is like out and moving. And so like, why are we like playing in these circles where we're putting all of our gifts on a shelf that have been given by God to be used?
I think I want to weigh in on this a little bit really quick. I don't think we should definitely be careful not to overestimate the innate sinful nature of a person, because I think there's a fair number of Gen Z, Gen X, Gen Y, whatever, that are going to be altruistic in their mentality and their perspective, but 80%, I'll throw out, I may make up a stat right here, right now. Lots more people are going to be much more self-focused and selfish in their pursuits, and they're not going to care a lick about what's happening out. And so long as it impacts me in a positive way, I'll go and I'll serve the homeless so long as I can post it on Instagram later.
That, right? Like, that's true. Yeah, thank you for saying that. But
that's the power of the Spirit. We need the regenerative power of the Spirit in our life to work us out of a selfish nature into a selfless nature. Consider Jesus the model, who came not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. Yeah. The most selfless thing that anyone could have ever done.
So Matt, as a millennial, do you think people are looking for the church to help provide meaning and purpose in their life?
I don't know if people are looking for that, generally speaking. I think I would love to be able to build a church and create a Christian culture that would broadly offer meaning and purpose, and a clear framework for why that meaning and purpose is going to do anything, and why it matters at all. Because if it's outside of a God who loves us, then eventually, a few billion years from now, the sun's going to become a red giant and engulf us all. So who cares? Or nature is red in tooth and claw. So there's nothing in nature, there's nothing in the world, in our universe, that would say that serving another human being actually matters. But God has made us in his image, and we are called to echo that image as best as we can once we've reclaimed it through the Spirit. So, I don't know where I was going with that, but it sounded really good up until I forgot.
That's okay.
That's good.
So let me jump in here, because I think we had an experience just the other day when we So we planned a trip to Grand Rapids. We're in Midland, so 2 hours. We planned a trip to go back to Grand Rapids. We brought a grill, and we brought 140 pounds of hamburger that we were going to serve people in the community. And I think what surprised me is I was really thinking that, man, if we're right in our thinking, Gen Z is going to be all over this, and they're going to want to come. And I remember it was, Thursday morning, and we're going Friday, and Lyndsay, you said, it's just the two of us going right now. Nobody else is going. So we put a plea out to the whole church, hey, come and join us. And we had all kinds of people say, hey, they want to be a part of it. And people from Grand Rapids said, hey, we'll meet you there. And it turns out there was just 4 of us that went. It was an incredible experience just to serve them hamburgers. That was awesome. But I feel like I'm missing something. Like, wow, I thought this would be something that people might jump on, especially Gen Z. Looking for meaning and purpose. Here's a one-off, simple thing. Go with us. Make hamburgers, serve the community, the homeless, come home, and then to see virtually nobody jump. How would you respond to the why?
Last minute.
Well, we've been telling them for 2 or 3 weeks, right? Because they brought 100. Remember, they give us.
Right.
We had one message out of 10,000.
Right.
They gave us a lot. So people responded. We had 100 blankets when we went.
Yeah. So I think there were a lot of people from Messiah that were like, oh, we wish we could go. Or a family was like, we are in Grand Rapids Thursday and we're heading home Friday. Otherwise, we would have had the whole family there helping. There were just a lot of scheduling conflicts. And we had posed 2 days. One was our primary, one was a backup. And a lot of people were like, if it was the backup, we would have gone. And so I want to be defensive of people in that nature and not just say that we threw it out there and no one bit, no one took the bait. And same with my Grand Rapids friends too, and people that I threw it out to there. It's there was a smattering of we're out of town, but we would have helped, and people who have been excited that we're coming, but it's been a lot on my part of we had to cancel in January, hang on, there's another date coming, I think we're going to go this Friday. And so there's a lot of last minute stuff that happens in that where people were bummed that they couldn't have made it. And then there is the handful too, I think 3 people who I had talked to, they were I really want to come. I've had an incredibly busy week. I've had something every single night this week, and this is my only night off. But if I'm feeling good when 5 o'clock hits and the workday is done, I'll be there. And and then 5 o'clock hit, and they're like, I'm sorry, I'm just so tired. And so it's 1 of 10,000 messages. You're nodding you feel that. I feel that too. It's I book up my calendar so much where it's try I don't know, Matt tries to get me for babysitting his kids, and I'm like, all right, it's February now, I'll be free in 2025 when you want to
book now, book early.
Yeah. So it's I think there is a lot more to it than just jumping on it. It's there's post-pandemic we're dealing with. There is stuff where people's plates were really full and now they're okay, we have a chance to breathe and we're really careful what we're putting back on it. And we're just tired. Our resilience has gone down a lot and our capacity to do things has gone down a lot. And I think some of it has been healthy, of just being able to remove ourselves from the position of us being the savior. And it's we're human and we can't do everything at all times for all people. So I don't know. I think I'm coming from a little bit of a defensive place too. I know I recognize that, but.
So Matt is a younger pastor, not too many years out, and you're hearing everything that Lyndsay said. How does a church make a difference and go beyond the breakwater when we're dealing with all of these different reasons why, I can't, I wish I could have, I would have, should have. How does the church make a difference?
Oh man, it's. I think I was thinking about this event particularly. Disappointed. We had just 4 of us. That's not bad. That's great.
True.
I have had many more people be standing around and just kind of chit chatting or just kind of, what do I do? So it's kind of almost a critical mass just right there. So if you think we're gonna get a team of 6 we're going to go out and we're going to hopefully recycle those 6 like in the next 3 months or so. But we'd love to get 6 other different people to come and try this out, because when you have, you can see it as an organization. As an organization, we are going to go, right? That's what we've always done with short-term mission trips. You get a select few, and everyone else kind of applauds, like, well done, hooray. But when you can go out beyond the breakwater in little ships, we're sending out a team of 5. We're going to go and do X. We're going to go cook out some burgers over at the kind of low-income property here in town. We're going to go and just collect cans door to door and raise some money for XYZ thing in our town. Right? I mean, there's an endless number of things that you could do that are meaningful and purposeful, but doesn't say as an organization, no, time out, not as an organization. Hey, would you come with me? Maybe we could find some friends and we can go do this together. Yeah. So you have the leader, but it doesn't have to be the leader of the church. And so I think as a young pastor, I would say I've been in the position of stirring up and trying to gather and let's go and go do this. But it doesn't needed an ordination.
Yeah.
You have been anointed by the Spirit, and therefore you can go out and bring a team of people with you and say, I have a passion for this. Would you come with me?
Yeah.
And that's a great way to go.
I also I know we're like running over on time, but we make our own rules, I think, so it's okay. So we're talking about like numbers too, and like this element of like assessing like, okay, is this something that Gen Z wants? And I feel like there's a little bit of maybe a question that pastors can be having of like, okay, if you did this thing and only like of the group of 4 of us, 2 of us were Gen Z or millennials. And so it's like, okay, if this is not something that they want, then I guess we won't do it. Like, I don't want this to be a reason for pastors and church leaders to be like, to think of any reason not to do it, because that matters. And so I think when we're looking at numbers and we've talked about changing the church scorecard, I think there's a place for numbers to exist. But I also think that whole trip, and also like back in November when we went and did it, like the 3 of us and plus another, I don't know, 4 or 5 of us there too. It's like everything that has ever been done is so like obviously God ordained, and God's hand has been on it, who has been there and who has not. And I think of like the car ride that I had with Brooke, who came with us. And it's like Brooke and I were in a car and you were in another vehicle with someone. And if it would have been more of us in that car, like, I don't know if Brooke and I would have been able to have as like awesome of a conversation as we had, and like brainstorming on the way back, and like just being there and everybody having a purpose and a role, and some people like chatting, and just hearing like, don't neglect based on like who is interested. Like, I feel like this is something that the church ought to be doing, is being on mission and like caring for those who are outside of it. Like, Jesus came to seek and save the lost. And so should we not also be carrying out that mission? And I just want to share this story because it was like the highlight of the year for me. It was like, we went back in November and we had met Chris, who he was without a home, without a job, and like kind of laid out like, this is what we want. And this is what it would be to be cared for, is like open up a warming center, like put us to work. Like, we want to care for our own people in a way that we know how, and order coffee pallets and charge it really, really cheap. Like, he outlined this whole thing. And then, he mentioned he wanted to get like a license in building, and he wanted a job. And so I had a friend in Grand Rapids who works for a ministry that kind of has like an employee training program. And so I was like, okay, we can't help you necessarily because we're not here, but I know someone who can. We connected him with my friend and his boss. And then on our way back to Grand Rapids this past week, I called him and I was like, he answered and he goes, "Miss Lyndsay, guess what?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "I'm getting me a house." And I said, "What, you are?" And he was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Guess what else, Miss Lyndsay?" I said, "What?" And he said, "I got me a job and I graduate in 2 weeks from that training program." And so I was like,
That's
wow.
amazing.
And I hadn't heard anything. I kind of hadn't heard anything from my friend or his boss. And so I had kind of questioned, I'm like, whatever happened with Chris? And so he came and he was there with us like the whole time. and was telling us about how he's going to be put into his house like this week. He had a shift at like the job he has over there, and like he should be graduating from that program with like a license to build. I don't think it's I don't know, technical builder's license, but it's some license that gives him like a skill. And I just think if like we had not gone out there, like God could have changed his life in a way, but I was so thankful to be a part of that story. And like that is, I feel like, not something that you hear for years and years and years and years to come. And like what a gift it was that just 4 months later, I could hear like how dramatically his life was changed. And so it doesn't matter how many people are going out there to do it. Like it could start with just 4 people. It can start with just one of you going out there and inviting people from the community to be an intersection point of just listening and caring and sharing the abundant life that is offered with Jesus. Yes.
So we got to wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up.
I'm a real follower. So what would you recommend the churches based on everything you just said? Matt, I'm going to ask you the same question. What would you recommend the churches?
Get out there and start like doing it. Listen to the people that are in your church or in the model on board on the ship, and listen to like where their hearts are being stirred, and then like figure out a way to mobilize it and use it.
Matt?
I heard a parable about pottery class. The professor said, to one half, your grade entirely depends on the most amazing piece of pottery that you can possibly make over the course of the semester. So get working on it. To the other half, he said, your grade depends on how many pieces of pottery you make. And so, interestingly, at the end of the semester, the best pieces of pottery came out not from the one half that was supposed to make the best piece, but the one that was making them all the time. So of those hundreds of pieces of pottery that one half of the class would have made, there were probably ones that sucked, that looked terrible. But I think that's the reality. I think that my invitation for anyone listening would be pick a thing, fail faster, do a new thing, fail again, try something else, succeed, and always bring others along with you. Never do anything alone.
That's great. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Lyndsay. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Beyond the Breakwater, a podcast of Elevate Community Ministries. Don't let the conversation stop here. You can email us at hello@beyondthebreakwater.org. We would love to chat with you, answer questions, plan a visit, and help you take your next step. We'll see you next week.